of about 120 influencers and stakeholders, with folks in that group that's been advising us starting over 60 days ago in regards to not only the virus situation, but also the economic situation around the region. We have been talking with those folks about just exactly this moment. This moment is based on coordination, collaboration, and cooperation, where we're all working together. And I know we've had numerous calls with these folks here, as well as many state elected officials and local officials on a regular basis, about how do we network together, how do we use the resources, and look at the point 8 in particular of the governor's 12-point proposals that he had us look at as we went forward with reopening the region. And point 8 is all about that cooperation, showing inter-regional cooperation in regards to sharing the resources, sharing the capacity in order to meet the metrics to keep us safe as we reopen and get people back to work as soon as possible. And that cooperation was on display just recently. In regards to about 3 weeks ago, it was brought to my attention that one of the biggest issues we were going to face in these regions was our diagnostic testing capacity. That's where we used our relationships at the federal level with our clinical labs and got Quest Diagnostic to commit to provide us enough testing kits and diagnostic testing capacity to serve 3 million people of Western New York. And obviously I got some calls on the way down here today in regards to the nursing home situation and the testing demands that they are putting on the nursing homes right now, which will dwarf any type of that capacity that we're having to deal with in regards to the diagnostic testing, such as what we put together with the hospitals and Quest Diagnostic. But that's another day, another conversation. But as we stand here today, the Western District really has 2 metrics that we have to complete right now. It all deals with hospital and hospital utilization and capacity. And my hope is that common sense will prevail. That as we get the numbers back this week and talking to folks across the Western District already, there is a good possibility that when these numbers are finalized and the review is done, that we'll be up and running in Western New York for the Western District. Obviously, that's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is if that doesn't happen, we're going to make sure that we continue to work together, and we do a daily hospital call with all of our networks from Buffalo to Rochester, Jamestown to Binghamton. We're talking to folks like Kaleida. We're talking to U of R, Rochester Regional. We're talking to Cayuga Medical, Guthrie, UPMC, all the major players in the region about maybe there's a way we can share that hospital capacity. Because not only to use that capacity and that hospitalization utilization in order to meet the metrics to open in the Western District, but what's going to be critical is that once we open, that we keep these metrics in compliance so that we don't shut down again. And that is where collaborating and working between these interregional type of relationships that we have continue to stay in place so that if one part of a region goes off, that maybe another region can step up, share its capacity, so that everybody of those 3.5 million people, 3 million people of Western New York have the benefits of that cooperation. And that's what we're committed to as we go forward. And then even Plan C is on the table for me. And I know a lot of the members here from the State Senate and Assembly agree with me. That common sense should also prevail when it comes to looking at Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny County. We talked about it up in Buffalo today. There is a very logical reason for them to be considered separate, those 3 counties, than the Erie County and the Western District region that they have. Is obviously there's a difference between those 3 counties and the urban population center of Buffalo. And there's also, if you look at the metrics of what these folks have been able to put together with Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny, they meet the metrics, and they can be open in and of themselves. And they're also relying on folks, and there's a relationship just to the north here, or to the south here, with the northern tier of Pennsylvania, where they're already open, and you're already seeing that dynamic between the 2 interplay with each other. So there is a really good, and I made this argument with the Lieutenant Governor, and she acknowledges that that's a legitimate position to take in regards to separating those folks out in regards to it. But we'll see how that goes as we continue to push forward. So, as we deal with this situation, I'll close by saying we recognize that the virus is real, it is here, that we have to have a healthy respect for it. but we can no longer live in a state of fear. It is time to lead. It is time to get back to work. It is time to make sure that we don't get politics involved into this process. It is time for the folks of Western New York to get back to work, because they're the ones best suited to take care of their needs, rather than keeping us in a lockdown phase where you'll be in a situation where people just are not going to be able to recover from this. And I'll just tell you, the economic devastation that we're hearing about already, the bankruptcies, the national impact, structural impact to our economy across the entire nation is real, it's deep, and the sooner we get back to work as a nation, the less impact we're going to have to deal with long term in order to recover. And so, and I don't mean to discount the lives of those that have been lost, but I will tell you, the magnitude of the impact on life and quality of life, if we do not get back to work, is much greater than even the Great Depression. And many hundreds of thousands of people died during that period of time, and we don't want that same situation to happen here. So the whole point is get people back to work. We've learned a lot during this shutdown with COVID-19. We've reestablished our supply chains. We know how to deliver personal protective equipment. We as a nation understand what it means to social distance. We as a nation understand what it means to wear a mask. We as a nation understand what taking your temperature when you walk in. We as a nation also understand, and people understand, that when we get back to work, it's not going to be like it was 3 months ago or 4 months ago. It is going to be a new normal, but it is a normal that the American people and the people of Western New York will lead and have demonstrated they're capable of doing. And to the governor, I just say continue to listen to the voice of the people. Their wisdom is always astonishing to me. They're demanding to get back to work. It's time to do it and be a partner in the people's voice to get us open. And so with that being said, I will invite our state senator, George Perrot, up to the mic. Come on up.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody, for being here. First of all, I'm grateful to Mike and Sarah Bigney for opening up so that we could do this today. They are a great example of a couple that invested here in Chautauqua County and opening this business here in downtown Jamestown. The business has been thriving. I come here often, and I love their coffee. And right now, you know, this is a challenge for them. It's like it is for so many other small businesses. And I'm so grateful that during this challenge, that they have still reached out to help our community. You come in here any morning, and there are boxes of coffee and food that are going to be delivered to our firefighters, our hospital workers, other frontline workers, and just thank you very much for what you've done for our community. It continue to be a great contribution even during this crisis that's straining your business. But this is the story that's being told everywhere across our district and across the state. These selfless contributions that people have made, that it's brought out the best in so many people, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm proud to represent the people of this region. When it comes to reopening, myself and Assemblyman Goodell, along with the assistance of Assemblyman Giulio and lots of input from private business owners and chambers of commerce, developed the Restarting New York plan. And that plan that we put out on April 15th is largely been adopted, if you will, into the governor's plans unofficially, and with one major exception. Our plan called for the regions, the economic development regions, to be judged independently. However, to remove from those regions the large metropolitan areas that many of them have. In our case, in Western New York, Erie County and the Buffalo region. The reason is because things are very different there. When you start talking about the phased-in approach, starting with low-risk businesses in lower population density areas like ours, it's a different dynamic. First and foremost, just in manufacturing and construction, which is what most of what Phase 1 businesses are, here in Chautauqua County, the vast majority of people get to those jobs through their own means, not through public transportation. There are no subways or buses or trains like there are in Buffalo. So that in itself, I understand, public transportation, people being on top of each other in closed quarters is a risk. So we don't have that situation here in Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny counties. Also, I think it's important for people to understand nobody is expecting that we're going to flip a switch and go back to doing things the way we did prior to this pandemic. And what we've also done is we've called upon businesses to develop their own plans. I can't think of anyone better than someone who owns a business or manages a business to come up with a detailed plan on how they can restart. And that is what happened. Following CDC and OSHA guidelines, which is also what the governor has called for, to ensure that those businesses have a plan that is tailored. So we've done those things. We've been proactive. I'm so proud of all the businesses, all the people that have come together to try and support this. And from that, we've actually created some larger sector plans with the assistance of Todd Tranum and others from the Manufacturers Association. They have put together sector plans for different business sectors so that we can apply best practices to all of those sectors, and shared that information, even to people that weren't members of the chamber or MAST, or everybody's been sharing that information and made it public access so that we can all learn from each other for these best practices. We're never going to eliminate risk entirely, but we can reduce the risk substantially. I'm also severely concerned with the disparity that's going on right now. Let's face it, folks, there are people operating, and it's been through what would be an unconstitutional, disproportionate application of those laws and executive orders, because on one hand, you have a business that's in manufacturing, manufacturing the same products as another business, and one has been given an exception, and the other one has not. That's not only is it not fair, it also is counterproductive. If these businesses that are operating, and I don't care if it's construction, if it's manufacturing, whatever businesses that have been allowed to operate as an essential business, if they are able to operate, and knock on wood, we have not seen any spikes in infection rates, then those same principles, whatever they're following, can be applied to other businesses. We need to pivot now from what is considered essential to what is considered safe to operate. And that's where we are with this plan. And it needs to go beyond just the broad one-size-fits-all plan of each region, and needs to be really considered county by county within those regions. And that's what we've been advocating for and will continue to advocate for. I want to thank Congressman Reed. You've been on the front lines of this, constant communication with all of us, elected officials, business people. We come together on Zoom calls. I see you now more than I ever have, although it's virtually. And I just appreciate your advocacy, all that you've done to keep us all together. It's a huge district that you have, and yet you've made us all feel a part of the team, and I want to thank you very much for that. So as we continue to move forward, what we need is common sense. And common sense is what will really get us back to work, I think, the quickest way. There isn't a business out there, and I'm a business owner myself, there isn't a business out there right now that's a responsible business owner that would want to take the chance of having any kind of an infectious outbreak attributed to their business. That in and of itself is going to drive people to safely and responsibly reopen those businesses, and that needs to happen now more than ever. We cannot continue down the path that we're in. We are, and I understand that the need is there, and we have tremendous resources being expended, especially at the federal level, to try and support businesses. We're grateful for that. But folks, we are writing checks from an empty bank account, and that has to stop. The best solution to all the problems that we're seeing, all of the phone calls that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, phone calls that we're receiving at my office and every other state legislator's office about unemployment issues, the best answer to that is to get people back to work. We cannot shut down our economy and create unemployment greater than we had during the Great Depression, when, by the way, there was no unemployment insurance. So we are truly in uncharted territory here. We cannot do that and sustain it for any longer. And as Tom mentioned, the public health impact of severe economic downturns will be far greater than what we're facing currently in COVID-19. So thank you again for your leadership and your recognition of that. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me now turn it over to the assemblymen, and we'll regroup. You're going up. All right, Andy Goodell. I'll let them figure it out. That was good partnership.
Is everyone feeling okay today? Mm-hmm. No temperature?
Nope.
Okay. I'm taking your word for it. Chautauqua County needs to reopen in a responsible and safe manner now. This is not about helping people make more money. It's about helping our friends and our neighbors who work at local retail stores and local businesses and local manufacturing keep their job. That's what this is about. It's about our friends and neighbors having a future here in Chautauqua County. And we know that every day that goes on when we're closed down without justification, another business comes closer to failing. We know that. So what's the data in Chautauqua County that's keeping us from opening? We haven't had a confirmed case within the city limits ever. We haven't had a new confirmed case south of Cassadaga in about 2 weeks. Our hospital capacity is unlimited because we have no one in our hospitals, in our ICUs, or on a ventilator with COVID-19 in Chautauqua County. I've been monitoring the deaths that are reported in the local newspaper and the obituary pages since this pandemic started. There have been 4 deaths from COVID-19 and just under 400 deaths altogether. You are 100 times more likely to die from something else in Chautauqua County than COVID-19. Yet our local businesses are being killed by a statewide shutdown that started with a crisis in New York City and continues with problems in Buffalo. We are not Buffalo or Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, New York City, or Long Island. Our health department has done a phenomenal job in contact tracing. They have the ability and the staff, as soon as they get an active case, to contact that person and find out everyone they've touched and come in close contact with, and they put those people into isolation or quarantine. But you can't do contact tracing in a metropolitan area where you're riding to work on a crowded subway filled with strangers. You just can't do it. But we can, and that's why we have one of the lowest infection rates in the entire state and why we should open. It kills me to see that you can shop any day of the week at Walmart, but you cannot shop for the exact same products using the exact same precautions in any local store. Does that make sense to anyone? We have manufacturers that have more than one product. They're allowed to produce one product line that's deemed by a governor to be essential and not the other product line. Same people, same manufacturing facility, same setup, same safety protocols. It makes no sense. Our founding fathers were absolutely clear that religion was essential. They included it in the First Amendment. And New York State included religion in the worship, the free worship for, quote, all mankind in our state constitution. Yet our governor shuts down religious services all across the state. You can't go into a religious service in Jamestown, even though there's no one that's tested positive ever in the city of Jamestown, even though you're practicing social distancing and wearing a mask and following proper safety protocols. My friends, we are dealing with a public pandemic panic that pushes out careful, thoughtful, safe protocols in moving forward. The First Amendment allows freedom of assembly, but not in New York State. Freedom of religion, but not in New York State. It requires that people who are the same situation should be treated the same. Not New York. If you happen to be a Walmart stock owner, you're doing great. And if you happen to have a local business, it's a challenge. It's time we go back to basics, reopen our economy, help our friends and neighbors keep their job and keep their livelihood. And in the meantime, this shutdown is killing people. Domestic violence has spiked. The morbidity rate in Chautauqua County, according to Dr. Perrot, has spiked because people are afraid to go to the emergency room for treatment. The number of overdose deaths has spiked. We need to operate thoughtfully and carefully and reopen Chautauqua County now. Thank you.
So to finish this up before questions, Assemblyman Gilio.
Actually, it's nice to be able to smile at all you guys today, not through a mask. You know, you can see from the team that I'm with how incredible they really are. My colleague, Andy Goodell, knows more about the Constitution than anybody else in the state of New York, both the U.S. and the state Constitution. He's amazing. Senator Perrot has led this from the beginning, and I do have a special place in my heart for the congressman. He has, since day one, also kept us apprised of what was going on in the federal government, what was next, what phase was coming next, what they were talking about doing, and that helped us do our job. And that was real important, and I can't thank the three of them enough, and the whole Western New York team. It has been incredible. I feel like I'm not doing as much as they do, just because I'm not as smart as they are. But the other part is, you know, I said a long time ago, and I said it in the Olean Times-Herald, in a Reader's Turn to Right piece, that I come from a district, I come from a place, I come from a community where action speaks louder than words. And we have seen in our community, they prove to be that they say the same thing. Action speaks louder than words. And all around us, we have seen wonderful things happen and great things happen. And we have come through this. Our three counties, if you take Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Chautauqua, have less than 140 total cases. We are not the tri-state area. We will never be the tri-state area. Even if you take Erie County and you go north, even though Chautauqua and Cattaraugus pretty much border all of Erie County, it's the northern part of Erie County that's having the problems. And it is nursing homes that account for a lot of those numbers and the reason we haven't come down. And yet they're very close in spite of all that. So I have a lot of hope in my heart. And the one thing I do have is faith and trust. And that faith and trust is in us. It's in the community. It's in small town America. It's the Main Street that has to open up. It's our neighbors that need to get to work. These are the important things. We want everybody to be healthy. I do not want a spike. I'll go with the metrics. But our metrics show us we are more than ready. And I go back to, again, faith and trust. The people that live here are not going to be like they were let out of school on the last day of classes and are going to run out and do everything that they did before. They're very smart. There's a lot of intelligence here. They know what's dangerous and they know what's not dangerous. We're not going to the beach, guys. We know this. We're not doing those kind of things. We're not flooding places. We will act responsibly. We are adults here. The governor does not have to tell us everything we should do. We have figured it out all along. So I go back to that. This Main Street should be open. Our folks should be walking down the street. They'll do the social distancing. They'll do the mask. They'll do the things to protect themselves and their families. Why wouldn't they? Why would we believe anything different? I know we don't. So it's time. And even with Erie County's numbers, we're this close. And Niagara County's numbers, but yet Genesee and Orleans, along the other side of their border, they're different. We have less cases in our part of the southern tier than the southern tier part that's opening. I mean, look, it's not that hard to figure out. These guys have told you, we're there, we're ready, and it's necessary. And I look forward to the day we can walk down the street and have coffee in here one more time. I don't even like coffee, I'm a Pepsi drinker. But in all seriousness, I can't tell you how nice it is to see you guys. I can't tell you how much I believe in what we're doing. I can't tell you how proud I am to be part of this team. And I'm hoping that within the next few weeks, we see our folks get that to work, they have more meaning in their life, and we protect people from the things that Assemblyman and Goodell talked about. We have worked very hard on domestic violence. We've worked very hard on drugs. We have tried to deter all that negative behavior, and we will continue to do that. But we have to give people hope, and I think today we're standing here with that hope. Thank you, and God bless.
Well, I know P.J. Wendell was invited to come. I know he was maybe tied up here on the way through, and I'll just tell you, the other thing that we have demonstrated, I hope, to all of you today is that it truly is a team. We really do not care who gets credit so long as the work gets done. And so we've had Eddie Sundquist on, the mayor of Jamestown. We've had Willie Rosa on these calls, working together, bipartisan, because it's about getting the people's work done, and that's where this team is an outstanding team. So why don't we open it up to some questions? And I know I'm supposed to be with Leon Panetta, but they'll take care of that. That's fine. But go right ahead.
Tom, quick question about
Yeah.
the 3 million tests. How are they going to be administered? Do you have to go to the hospital, your primary care doctor? Is it going to be a clinic? How's it going?
Yeah, so it's not it's a testing rate and a commitment of a supply chain to cover 3 million people worth of testing according to the governor's metrics. And so what we're doing with Quest is it's supplemental to what the hospitals and what the local facilities have put online. And so where there is a hotspot or there's a shortage of kits, things of that nature, we'll direct it to those locations. And so we've already networked with the hospitals, we've already networked with the local providers, we've already networked with the clinics, and so it's just a matter of directing it where it needs to go. And I appreciate the relationship with Quest in regards to stepping up and putting that in black and white, because I do know in these regional councils and also up at the state that the fact that that was there gave them assurance that that metric was clearly exceeded in each one of the regions.
For any of you all, or if you all want to take part in answering this, so you're aware of what's happening in southeast Pennsylvania. There's a series of counties down there that are disobeying their governor's orders about the mandates that he's put in place. If every day people are more frustrated today than they were yesterday when it comes to these shutdowns, a lot of residents in this area, would you support a disobeyance of the governor's mandates here in New York State if it gets to the point where people are so frustrated and they just totally disregard these mandates that are in place?
Yeah. And that is, again, part of the message is to the governor. Listen to the people. The people are speaking, and they're saying they're ready. They're not willing to live in fear anymore. They understand the risk. They understand that that this is out there, the virus is there. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that understand what it takes in order to do this safely, and they'll do it so long as you educate them and you encourage them to follow it. This idea that government mandates are going to keep people on the sidelines and locked up in perpetuity, that's not how we operate in America. We still have our civil liberties, we still have our freedom, and you got to balance these two together. So, and I expressed this directly with the Lieutenant Governor. I've reached out to the Governor at least, I can't tell you how many times now, gave him my personal cell and asked him to call, but we don't get a return call from him. Haven't talked to him in 3 years, to be perfectly honest with you, even though he said he talked to every member of the congressional delegation. But that being said, we will continue to do that. But talking to his office and to the Lieutenant Governor, one of the things that I expressed concern about representing folks and hearing from folks is when we reopen and as we set these metrics in place, if they move the goalpost, and there's been some moving of the goalpost, as we dealt with the hospitals to get elective surgery in place and open up their outpatient surgery capacity, there's been a continuous moving of the goalposts in this type of Lucy of the football, if you would, pulling it away as we get close. And if you keep doing that, people are going to get frustrated. People are going to exhibit that type of behavior. So I think you just got to be fair with people. You got to listen to them, put the metrics, trust the data. He trusted the data going into shutdown. Trust the data as we reopen, and my colleagues articulated it best.
Andy, if you can, something that you can please go over.
Yeah, there you go. Because he's got his reporter.
We obviously always recommend that people follow the law, and as an attorney, I would say nothing else. We are also encouraging people to log on to the governor's webpage and fill out the written comment section and share their thoughtful observations about our need to reopen. You can also call the governor's line, and if you're lucky to get through, you'll get somebody that will tell you you'll get a prompt response sometime in your next life. But we are certainly encouraging people to access the governor's webpage. There's a contact form, fill it out, send in their information. The last comment I would make is that while I always urge people to comply with the law, whether we agree with it or not, I also openly urge our sheriff's department and other law enforcement to prioritize their criminal work to focus on the most serious violent crimes first and the most serious criminal activity before they focus on whether or not someone is improperly driving a golf cart.
Andy, you had mentioned that there are no cases in Jamestown. I'm just wondering, how do you know that, seeing that the county health department doesn't disclose locations?
Well, the county health department, as you know, reports it by quadrant. And if you're watching daily on the quadrant map, you'll see that the number of confirmed cases in the Jamestown quadrant, which includes, about a third of the county actually, has not changed in several weeks. The reason I know that there is no resident within the city of Jamestown is because the health department does maintain the exact address of everyone, and they shared that information with me.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, in regards to people speaking out against New York on pause, we've seen a couple protests here in Jamestown. I know there's one scheduled for Saturday. Whoever wants to react to this, but in regards to the civil disobedience that we're seeing, do you agree with the protests, and do you think that their voices maybe would be heard as we move forward?
Well, I think, as long as people are, not being, nonviolent and they're, following safety protocols, I think people have the absolute right. It's a fundamental right to be able to protest. These groups are people that are genuinely concerned about the erosion of their civil liberties and their rights as Americans, and I agree with them. I said on the floor of the Senate on March 3rd, when we passed this sweeping legislation, that the quote that came to mind was "Never let a crisis go to waste," and that's what was going on there. So it is opportunities like this that our rights are taken away, and the erosion of our freedom. So I believe that is the number one concern of those folks, and whether or not you are comfortable right now, whether or not you have enough food and enough money and enough whatever to get you through the next week or the next month or whatever, the question is, are you free? Are you able to exercise the God-given rights that our founding fathers and that so many people died to protect? And I think that the answer right now is no, and that's what those people are protesting, and they have the absolute right to do that.
Do we know any timetable as to when we'll reopen yet? It seems like there's still so much up in the air.
Well, we know that on Friday, May 15th, that is the first deadline that the governor has set, and the first New York pause ends on that date, and it's some indication that some of the regions will be able to start reopening in that phase one. Beyond that, we don't know, and I think it's important to note that there are 7 metrics that have to be met to get to phase one, and I don't know what the next phase is going to require. None of us do. That's essentially up to the governor, as long as those powers of his go unchallenged. So we can't tell you. But I do know that here, you can stand on the edge of Chautauqua County and throw a rock into Pennsylvania. And, and we're that close. And starting now, they are reopening over there. And, I don't care what it is, whether it's retail or it's restaurant, it's manufacturing, if it's a special event, those events that are going to go on down there are going to be an indicator as to what is going to happen. Will we see spikes or not? That is yet to be determined. But I will tell you that we will lose business here, and that those restaurants right now that are surviving on takeout are going to lose business, and they may not be able to remain open. If you're something as simple as a fishing tournament, which brings millions of dollars of economic impact to Chautauqua County and to Western New York in general, the fish don't care where the state border is. You can move a fishing tournament that might have been taking place in Dunkirk or down on Chautauqua Lake, and you can move it to an inland lake in Erie or in Pennsylvania or Ohio. You certainly can launch a boat in Erie, Pennsylvania, and fish in New York waters for those same fish. So there is going to be an economic impact that is going to be long lasting, and every day that goes by, that impact is going to be more severe and last that much longer.
George, if I may, from what I understood, and I may be wrong, I thought that it would be 2-week intervals between phase 1 and phase 2. You said you're not sure when phase 2 would happen. I thought as long as the numbers are okay with the dashboard, phase 2 would begin 2 weeks after phase 1 was started.
And I think that there's certainly that expectation, but if you kind of read between the lines, there is no set. There is no set. Let's face it. The governor can determine whatever he wants, and as was mentioned before, he's moved the goalpost many, many times. And I am certain that even though those metrics are set out, that how do you follow those same metrics and then move to something like opening up, the arena here and having people sitting next to each other? I don't think that is going to. That doesn't necessarily fall under those 7 current metrics. So expect the goalpost to be moved again. Unless, of course, we push back, and there is that response.
Okay. All right, I guess that will do it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it all.
Hey, Tom, real quick.
Yeah.
COVID-4, any word on going back to Washington?
Yeah, so I was just talking to the folks on the way down here from Buffalo. Tentatively scheduled for Friday, but they're having difficulty getting the votes because it's a partisan exercise as to what they're doing. And so now we're seeing maneuvering from the Progressive Caucus as well as other members of the Democratic Party that they may not have the votes, so they're pushing it into next week as some of the public demands on the Democratic side. So we'll see. I'm ready to go back to work whenever. I'll be there or use technology. I'm into that too.
There you go.
All right,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Is there a question?